This is Baruch Fleischman here at the Tikkun Elevator Kollel. This is the book, Rabbi Yosef Chaim Mimran, 7-Step Guide to Jewish Spirituality. What do we really ultimately want to do? Connect with God. God is eternal. He's right here within us, but we have a whole mechanism of defenses that keep us away from that recognition. Rabbi Mimran is coming to sort of break the bubble, so to speak. And he wants to talk here about, this is part 6, the light of consciousness. So it says like this: since I am your God, the true reward is the attachment to me and to bask in the rays of my holy presence. So speaking, as a person who really thinks that prayer is really, really, really important, and that through prayer you can get, your prayers can be answered. But the real answer that I think that a person gets from prayer and from his Torah study is a relationship with the Ein Sof Baruch Hu. So the main thing that we want to do is the attachment to the Ein Sof, and to bask in the rays of his holy presence. Because that itself is the expanded consciousness that we need to know in order to be able to survive a world full of the wrong kind of temptations. Now, Rabbi Mimran has been talking specifically about how our thought processes, they really act as a screen to keep us away from being able to look at the real eternity that's within us. So here we go in his thoughts. How can we escape the devastating clutches of the emotional ego? Something happens, you become emotional about it. They can't talk to me like that. That was a very bad business deal. They're going to shut me down. There's all different kinds of things that, I just look at it from my perspective. That could drive your emotions into real fear. It shows up everywhere. And it seems to be overwhelmingly powerful. The good news is that if we respond to it appropriately, the emotional ego is not powerful at all, as it has no power of its own. It can be likened to a dark shadow cast by the ego, a shadow that will disappear as soon as a light is shined upon it. Now, this basically is that if you've ever had a situation where you were very upset, could be when you're hurt also, but, different kinds of ways of looking at this, physically hurt, I meant. But that thoughts start going through your mind one after another. They keep going, they build on each other. And the emotion feeds it. So, indeed, the truth is that the emotional ego, which is driving that emotion, it fears the light of your consciousness. It is afraid of being found out. The emotional ego can survive only so long as you unconsciously identify with it. In other words, the way I feel is me. That's the way I feel. That's the way I did it. I did it because I felt that. So it's you, and only if you harbor an unconscious fear. And then also there's another condition, Rabbi Mimran says. If you hold and you harbor within yourself unconscious fear of facing the pain that lives within you. I'm not sure what he means by that. But in other words, if this is going on inside of your head, one thing you're not doing is really looking at it. You're not really thinking about what's going on in your head. You're just identifying with it. Therefore, if you don't confront your own pain, meaning if you don't look at what is going on in your head, if you, let's go over here, don't bring the light of your consciousness into it, here we are, don't bring the light of your consciousness into it, that is, you start looking at it, you will be forced to relieve that pain over and over again. The emotional ego may masquerade as a dangerous monster so that you will do anything to avoid looking at it. Distract yourself. But in truth, it is nothing more than an insubstantial phantom that just keeps pumping energy into your emotions. A shadow that can never prevail against the power of the presence of your own soul. So he says, trying to ignore our pain and telling ourselves the pain is just an illusion will in no way free us from the pain. The pain's still there. So what can free us? What can free us from this pain? Is our effort to recognize the truth and bring that truth into our own experience. This is why the emotional ego doesn't want us to observe it directly and see it for what it is. As soon as we observe it, feel its energy within us, and bring our attention to it, at that moment we break our identification with it, and we allow a higher dimension of consciousness to enter our lives. It's like what he said before, it's like shining a light on something. You step back and you just look at what you have been thinking. Watch your thoughts. Once you become the observer and the witness of the emotional ego, so now you start looking at the way you feel, the thoughts that it generates. It can no longer use you by pretending to be you, because it's not you. Let me move this up here a little bit. Sorry. Most importantly, it can no longer replenish itself by feeding on the negativity within you. It is then that you find your own inner strength. Because by looking at what is going on, especially in the most emotional times, by looking at that, you will find the true you, which he said in other places, but here he says you will find your own emotional strength. And you have accessed the power of soul. So this little blurb at the bottom that he brings us here, he said, what can free us is our effort to recognize the truth and bring that truth into our own experience. This is Baruch Fleischman for the Tikkun Elevator Kollel, and saying this year also on the Devekas Network with Rabbi Mimran. All the best.